Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. Dave and Amy Byers back again to talk about, I think just everyone's favorite subject in the FedEx space. And it's basically a curse word when it comes to the hiring side of things, but First Advantage.
Yeah.
It is the platform that we use to hire and evaluate candidates. But tell me a little bit more. If somebody's never heard First Advantage, what would you say it is?
So First Advantage has changed over the years. They've used it. It's our background screening and qualification process for onboarding new drivers into the FedEx network that then can become available for us to hire. Yep. So all things start with the FedEx application. Back in the day, we used to have to go to FedEx. I remember I'd help Dave before I came over. We'd go to FedEx location and fill out the application at their location on their computer that had the FedEx system or the First Advantage system loaded. Now we're able to have that on the fly. You can do it from your phone, you can do it from your computer, whatever. Even some hiring agencies have access to it. So it's kind of the start of all things employment. After you've identified a candidate that fits for your company, you need to screen them.
Yeah.
And sometimes rescreen them. But screen is the first word, right? So that's where you put in your name, their email, your contract number, what type of driver they're applying for. So, which is counterintuitive. Also, package A is not class A driver. CDLA is B. It's very not, a little convoluted, but you would want to pick whether they're a non-DOT driver. Do they need a physical and a drug test? Do they just need the screening and the drug test? So you can pick the package that you want them screened for. And then the next part, you just add what terminal and class and level of employee that they're going to be, level of driver. And then you hit the go part, and then hopefully they fill it out, which is a whole other conversation about getting things through the process. Is they have to then fill out that part, which asks them, everything from social security number to background check. It's going to do full background. The line haul side is a little bit more in depth, but federal, criminal, local, job verification, and motor vehicle report. Okay. So that's the process. And then that will also track the DOT physical and drug screen.
So it's always after you found somebody, do you guys do like a phone screening first before you ever send somebody to First Advantage, or is it the first step in the process?
So we have a conversation. Usually they apply.
Yep.
We have a conversation with them to just determine whether they're a good fit for the job.
Yeah.
And then we push them the application, and then we actually have a phone screen team that will dig in a little bit deeper and have a phone screen. But you'll learn a lot about people is how quickly they want to fill out that application. If you have to prod and poke a candidate to fill out the application, probably not going to be your best worker, or they just don't need the job that bad, or they've had some technical difficulties. So we find that quite a bit. But when we kind of introduce the screening process, we kind of hit all those things right out of the gate. Like, hi, this is Amy. I'm sending you an application. It's coming from First Advantage. It's going to say needs attention or needs action. If you have any issues, there's a little chat bot in the corner that's open from 8 to 5 p.m. that can help you. But it's going to ask for 10 years of experience. I kind of hit all of the headache stuff, right? Like they want 10 years, no gaps. And intuitively, when you fill out an application for an employment, being unemployed is a negative, right? So a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to tell you that I didn't have a job for 6 months, or I was, lazy, or whatever the case, whatever that perception looks like, where we just need them to fill it out. So I always say, if you were unemployed for a small amount of time, just put unemployed. Doesn't hurt you. I just need you to fill the 10 years with no gaps, because if there's a gap, it won't let you finish. Same thing with any type of, points or anything. Just fill it out. but even little things like it asks for your previous employers, go back 10 years, and it wants their email address and phone number. Like, a lot of these folks don't even know what they had for breakfast.
Yeah.
So, like my memory, I don't even know what I had for breakfast some days. You're moving so quickly. Like, I don't remember that, guys. I'm like, so, okay, you just have to trick it, just get through the process.
Yeah.
Do your best. So the hurdle of just getting it filled out is definitely a process, right?
Yeah.
It's a lengthy process, but I get why they do it. But, now it's like upload your driver's license, and there's all kinds of technical situations with that. Or the paper, all of our new driver's licenses in Ohio, they come paper first, and then they mail you the hard copy. It doesn't like to take a picture of that one. So getting through the application is the first step and is very trying. So once you get through the process, then it kind of kickstarts that process, right? It's their processing in the background.
Yeah.
Their MVR is processing, their background check is processing, their verification of employment is processing, and then they get an email with the request for the drug screen and or physical.
Okay.
So now the employee is kind of on their way to do their side of it. And then there's kind of our side of managing that relationship. And I think the questions that you're going to be poking me is what happens when those things kind of pop back at you, right?
Yeah. Well, and just from a general perspective, that screening, that first step, how long does that generally take?
So it could take somebody 20 minutes to fill out an application. The screening process, like the background check process, can take up to a week.
Okay.
I have someone in there right now that it's been a month. And it's not anything to do with them or their background check. Usually they would always say, well, if there's a delay, it's probably because there's something creeping in the person's background, so you probably don't want them anyway. And it's really not. It's just court closures and record, protections. We had a system outage in Cleveland the other day. So literally I had somebody, and it stinks because I actually lost an employee because they came to me because they needed a job. And 2 weeks later, they were like, we didn't have a result. So the day I called them and I was like, hey, finally, you're eligible. Nothing popped on your background, but I couldn't even get them onto FedEx property to train because their background wasn't cleaned.
Okay.
So, or wasn't reported yet. So that's a frustrating piece of it, right? Which is not FedEx's fault. It's not First Advantage's fault, but it is the court system's reporting. So that causes a little bit of strain, but it's typically, I've had people that, and these are good candidates. So these are the ones that you want. When they've been in a job for a long time, so the verification is only like one employer or two employers over 10 years, and they don't move around a lot. So there's not a lot of cities to check as far as background checks go. And they don't have anything that's negative on their driving record, which is kind of your ideal candidate, right? You can get eligible within 24 hours.
Okay.
You can get a result that quickly. I usually find that there's one or two, like the national, federal, or the First Advantage check is the one that's kind of lingering a day or two. But usually within a week, you can get whether they're eligible or ineligible.
Okay.
And there are some false negatives and some false positives. So, and that's kind of another section. We'll kind of touch on that here in a little bit. But again, you're looking at a week. I always say a week to where you can get an eligible result. If I start seeing that things are processing, I totally keep touch with the person during that time frame. Like, hey, we're just waiting on this verification of employment. We're just waiting on the city of Cleveland. Usually I can get, if there is something lurking in the background, that's when they're like, oh, well, I did have this thing. It was a, misdemeanor. I'm like, oh, there it is. So then you at least have a headspace of they might pop positive or they might have a good or a bad background check that they might have forgotten to tell you about earlier on. So in that time frame, though, you can kind of poke and prod people to get that drug test and that physical completed. Like, hey, while it's processing, why don't we save a little bit of time and go for that screening? Because a lot of times, we just actually had one for the first time that popped the guy could not get a physical.
Just couldn't get an appointment?
Just couldn't get it passed. He went, and there was just no, like, whatever it was. And I've never had that. Usually it's you need to go see a doctor, blood pressure medicine, whatever the cause, right? And there's always like you just need to sign off from your doctor. This was like, no, you can't get one. So he was like, I can't get one. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's a requirement. So that was, but his background hadn't been cleared yet either. So it was nice that we kind of got that ahead.
Some time, energy.
But it does definitely point to the fact that you need to fill your funnel, with candidates in order to get a couple good ones that kind of make it through the whole process, right?
Yeah.
It's not a 1-for-1. You can't just guarantee that one guy. I mean, I've even had referrals from guys that are like my top drivers that have tested positive for drugs or their background checks aren't clean. Doesn't mean they're not a good person or I wouldn't want to hire them.
Yeah.
Just they can't pass. They just can't get through the process. So
yeah, and like what you said, I think it is probably really important to emphasize that you do need to do as much communication as possible from the beginning to help prepare them for what's coming, for the things they have to fill out and the time it could take, but also every couple of days checking in if you want to help make sure that somebody who's looking for a job a bunch of places continues to think of you and doesn't just think that you've forgotten about them because it's been a week. That's an important way to keep them in there.
Yep, you have to keep them engaged. Again, that process can delay, so staying engaged with them. The big question that I always get is, when can I put my notice in? And I tell people all the time, wait until everything's clear.
Yeah.
Because I would hate to have you give a notice and then not be able to hire you, right? So ineligible or something from a while back, or maybe even they were a FedEx driver before for another contractor and maybe had a signature failure. So there's another layer of can't drive for us that's beyond First Advantage that can kind of lurk in the background, so they can be eligible, negative drug test, great DOT physical, everything's verified, and they can still possibly pop out at the end. So, I always say, just please, please wait. And they're like, oh no, I've never used drugs in my life. I'm like, let's just wait, because it could be a medication or who knows what. And they're like, I didn't know. Especially with some of the vitamins and things, a lot of people don't know that a lot of these natural things have THC in them, or to what level.
Enough to cause you to fail a drug
even
test.
Oil, even like CBD oils and things like that, they do have levels of THC in them that they don't recognize. So, it's just you just completely roll the dice, right? You had a great job. You weren't maybe the happiest, but now you have no job because you put your notice in and now you're burned a bridge and now, can't work for me. So that's kind of that process, right? We just wait until everything's good, but staying in contact. I constantly say, and that's why we do that phone screen after they fill out the application, because we have then a little bit more than maybe they put on their Indeed app or their resume. I have exactly what they put in. If they moved somewhere, like, tell me about when you lived in Florida, or, you have a little bit more information to go on, and you can see the whole tenure picture when you print that application, and you can have the phone screen with them. So first step for us is First Advantage application, or obviously they apply, have a quick conversation, send them the application, kickstart the process, get them the drug screen and physical, stay in touch. Then we do a phone screen. So then when we're close, I can follow back up and say, like, hey, you had a great phone screen with our team. Your background looks like it's progressing well. Drug screen and physical are good. I'll have an answer for you, hopefully. And it does give you an estimated date. But sometimes those are, they extend. When they extend, make sure you are going back in and letting the person know, like, hey, it looks like this was supposed to report on the 23rd. It looks like now the 27th. Please hang in there with us, because we're really interested in getting you, processed through. There's even times where if somebody's drug test and everything is popped through and it's just a verification of employment, we have a deeper conversation, and we'll even bring them in for training if they're a good candidate and we know that it's good. I'm not going to put them in a truck, and I'm not taking them to the terminal yet, but if we're having a ground cloud class and I'm like, ooh, that would really kind of, for the whatever, nice for the base rate that we would have to pay them, the 6 hours or 8 hours of training that we would have to provide, it's a good way to kind of roll the dice. And yes, you could say that it's a little bit of a waste of money. You're getting the cart before the horse. But that is one situation where we do kind of push through.
Yeah, I was going to ask how early, like the earliest you would bring somebody in for
training. That is the earliest, when it's a verification of employment, especially only on a P&D driver. Because the verification of employment as far as like work history doesn't matter as much. It's not weighted as much as it used to be with the new CT program, which is the training program that we are required to perform for a new driver. But line haul, that is very specific. They have to have experience with tractor trailer. They have to have 1 year, unless you're putting them through the ELDP program. But yeah, I think that's that would be the one. As long as the background's eligible, there's some checkpoints. There's a person ID on the second screen. You can kind of look. If it's blank, I reach out to my quals team and say, why doesn't this guy have an ID? There's always something lurking in the background when a clean file doesn't push through.
Yep.
And then there's many results that come that are not just eligible, right? Needs attention, case canceled.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, everything I'm hearing is a process. It's a week, or a couple of weeks. It's that's not ideal, but it doesn't sound horrible. So why do people hate First Advantage so much? What is it what are the problems that come in this process that seems kind of defined?
So I'll hit two sides of it because I can get caught up with it as well, where I get super mad, right? At First Advantage, and it's totally my fault, right? Like maybe my guys didn't fill out, they didn't put a digit on the driver's license on a road test. So they send it to me or they send it to my team and we upload it. I should have taken 5 minutes to make sure that it was thorough before I uploaded it, right? So the problem though is then you upload it, it's 24 hours before it's scored, you see that it's not approved and you're like, what? Right? Yeah. And they're like, damn it. And then you go look and you're like, that was me. So then you add the digit and then you re-upload it and now it's 24 hours again. Okay. So that's tough when it happens on like a Thursday.
Yeah.
And then you recognize on Friday that it's not approved and they don't work weekends. We work weekends. So not having a 24/7 infrastructure to support our business is definitely a frustrating downside. I get that. So if you submit it on Thursday, it's rejected on Friday, you resubmit it, it could potentially not push until Monday or Tuesday. So it's like what was 24 hours has now turned into 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And that's tough when you're trying to get somebody in a class and trying to get them through the next hoops and bring them on board and kind of do all these things. So that's a frustrating part of it is that upload piece, that secondary piece of uploading the credentials, which is their road test, the training certificate, their medical card, right? Those things need to be, once they get eligible, and that's when the handoff then goes into like where we can start affecting change and getting things done quickly. That's when it gets frustrating. There are errors too. I've had First Advantage score a document and it's wrong. They're like missing, registration number from the doctor. I'm like, no, it's right there. They're like, oh, I see it now. And then they have to wait to push it, So there are some things that are not, 100%. But for the most part, on that side of it, it is definitely my fault. But I can get equally as mad at them because they can't just go, oh, you fixed the digit, we're going to fix it. It's 24 more hours.
Yeah.
So that gets a little frustrating. The pieces that you can't control is if a candidate applies for you as a contractor and then applies for me as a contractor, it'll come over as case canceled and you don't have transparency to what that background looked like. So the candidate wanted to work for anybody, just, out there, apply, right? And applied for you and filled out the application for you, filled out the application for me, and then it came over as case canceled, meaning there's a duplicate in the system. Oh. But then you don't have transparency to what their background check looks like. So you have to just kind of keep calling and checking. You can send them for the drug screen and physical because it still had, you still have that link, but you don't really have a whole lot of transparency to what's going on with that candidate.
Yeah.
That's super frustrating. So you have to email your quals team, which is your division, and then the word quals at FedEx.com, and hopefully they can help you, or get on to your Service Connect, because First Advantage no longer takes phone calls. So you have to go to help.fadv.com and go to Service Connect. It's in the bottom corner, and basically get on like a chat with a live person.
Okay.
Again, limited hours, so that gets, their Pacific time, so I guess that's helpful that I'm in Ohio.
Yeah. So
I get them a little bit longer. But from there, case canceled is tough. I've also seen recently ineligible on our P&D drivers, but it's not ineligible. They actually just have their CDLB or their CDLA, but they're taking a non-DOT job.
Oh, interesting.
So what happens is there's a mismatch on the medical card because they have to be non-accepted interstate instead of intrastate, which they are currently. So then it's just a match. But if you see it, it pops through and you're like, oh my gosh, I had such a great conversation with that guy. He was totally great. He's going to be perfect in a P1000 because he drove CDL.
Yeah.
Like this guy's bus driver, like good dude, worked for the schools. Like what could possibly be ineligible about this guy? And you look and it's just some simple goofy thing that you can move through, but that flag comes through and it says ineligible and it's like red, right? And this is a guy that you really want to hire and it's frustrating. So you kind of got to do a little bit of digging. So you click on the MVR and kind of make sure that it's not, 95 points, right? That's holding you accountable, or suspended license or something like that. It's just the CDL. So that's okay. But again, it's that initial contradicting information that might have you thrown in one direction or not.
And it's a delay. Yeah.
It is. Well, it's actually, so it's a delay, but the crazy part is you can just keep going because the background's cleared, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't click on the MVR report to see that it was the fact that they had a CDL. Yeah. You would just say, oh, FedEx deemed you ineligible. You're ineligible.
But you just don't know.
But you just don't know. And I don't know why that does that, but I would have, the first time it flagged for me, I was like, well, that's weird.
Well, and where did you, learn all of these different little things? It's basically just had, process of elimination.
Yeah, we've been doing it a long time. Yeah, trial and error, asking a lot of questions. I really dig in. Over the years, somebody, our staff would bring us one and say, like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I'm eligible. I've never done anything wrong in my entire life. And you can see on the file, it'll say, like, background check, green or red or yellow, background check, MVR, red. So that's the first thing I do, because I'm going to have an adult conversation with this person and say, like, hey, man, it's your driver's license. Come back to me in 2 years when your childhood speeding have left. Or, hey, man, this is what's flagging. And if it's right, and they're like, oh, no, that dropped off. I didn't get charged for that. Then I need you to go to the BMV and check it. So I learned through, when you have a conversation with someone, you have to give them a reason for why you can't hire them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I saw it. And when I would look at it, I'd say, oh my gosh, like, I can hire you. It's an MVR mismatch. So then I would reach out to First Advantage and say, what do I need to do here? And they're like, oh, no big deal. You just need to upload a new MVR and have them go to the BMV and update, the MVR on their side. So they have to go to the BMV and change it. And re-register. It's called self-certifying their medical card. We don't have to do it on the P&D side, but if you have your CDL or CDLA, you do. So you just have to change it from kind of a DOT to a non-DOT driving position. But it's just something, so minor and not ineligible by any means.
Yeah.
Right? So the duplicate searches come over, super frustrating. The ineligibles come over, super frustrating. Delayed. If it's delayed on a job verification, there is actually a form that you can get off of MyGroundBiz that you can download, and you can actually verify it yourself. So you can do a little bit more digging, and you can, in your English-speaking voice, try to reach out to these business owners that are probably on their cell phone and just say, like, hey, I've even texted business owners. I'm like, hey, I get it. You're busy. I'm busy too. I just really need you to answer these questions for me. Can you do that? And they're like, yeah. So then they answer the questions for me. You fill it out. You fax it to First Advantage. And then First Advantage.
Find a fax machine.
Oh, correct. E-fax.
Yeah.
So you fax it to First Advantage, and then they will call. But at least I've had a conversation with the guy or the girl who owns the company and say, like, hey, and by the way, there's going to be an 800 number that calls you, or a 347 number that's going to call you to verify this. Can you please answer it and do it? Like, this guy really just, he's a good dude, wants a job, right? Can you just help us out? And that's more on the line haul side, but that's when it's delayed, right? So if you want that guy through or that girl through quicker, then you gotta do a little bit more work. You might have to take some of the work on your end instead of just getting frustrated that it says delayed. Help.
Yeah.
If a drug screen hasn't posted, and I know it's been a few days, I will call the MRO and say, here's the specimen number. And they say, oh, well, there it is. And they just didn't have it linked. Like, for some reason, the social security number or something didn't connect or whatever. So you just kind of have to force it. And then all of a sudden, magically, it's negative and you're good and you've moved the ball forward a little bit. So I guess my suggestions or recommendation would be, don't just sit on it, right? Try to get it to move forward. And if somebody's MVR turns yellow, or if you identify that their background check is red in any category, have the conversation with them immediately, get them off your dashboard and move to the next qualified candidate instead of trying to force, the square peg in the round hole. Because, ideally you want safe people to work for you. And I get that it's a long background check.
There's a reason for a screening. There's a reason for all this testing.
Yeah. So, but there is a way to kind of navigate and kind of move through some of that stuff. But it's frustrating when our guys are like, hey, you got
that's what I'm saying. Is like, you deal with this as an owner, as on the HR side, but you've got, maybe you had a guy who called out or who quit, or you had to let go, and now you've got a manager in a truck, or you've got a guy covering another route. how much do they understand that, yes, First Advantage makes things take a long time, and that's why drivers are delayed? Like, how hard is that conversation, managing those mindsets of, we're waiting on a guy because he's sitting through First Advantage?
The managers have been around so long that they understand it at this point.
Yeah.
But think about, like me at the terminal, I couldn't manage this process and manage the terminal.
Yeah.
This is, I want to say it's a full-time job in itself, but, Amy does everything else with the team at the office, and it is a lot of work. And our managers, we include them, right? The why. We got back to the why. So we include them in the conversations, and we tell them everything that's wrong. But they also know if they don't thoroughly fill out a road test, it's going to hang up that potential driver. So they understand the hiccups that come with them being thorough before they submit to the office all the paperwork that needs to be submitted from their end. So they understand it, but it's really goes back to being transparent with them and explain to them the process, because it ultimately puts the manager a couple days out if something doesn't go right on the First Advantage side, which seems to be the case. We get a lot of hangups when it comes to that, but they're pretty good about understanding.
I'll tell them too. I'll be real transparent. I'm like, hey, I have 10 candidates coming through for 2 positions, and then I'm like, okay, the next day, 2 days, I'm like, all right, we have 4 of the 4 of the 10 have actually made it through to stage 3, right? Or 2 of them, and now I'm waiting on a drug screen. Like 4 of them are eligible, but we're waiting on a drug screen from 2, and they're like, oh boy, So they know that it's on the employee side or the candidate side as well as First Advantage as far as that like delay in processing. But I will say people's frustration with First Advantage is typically the wait time, right? That 24-hour time frame, and a lot of it stems from their own mistakes, right? Like I have to eat that all the time. It's my fault. So we have to go above and beyond to make sure things are correct. Like if that's that driver's license number on the road test, or they didn't do a full S under satisfactory, whatever it looks like, or missed a Y on the line haul road test, whatever that looks like, it's very easy to do, but you need to double check it because it's a longer wait it takes less time to double check things right out of the gate.
Wait extra few
little
days.
Things I tell them too. If you get a medical card, if it seems blurry, it probably is blurry. And by the time it gets to First Advantage uploaded, it's going to be even blurrier. So that's the worst thing is like I upload it. You're not just checking a box. It has to be reviewed. If it's cut off. So I always say, send me a picture of your medical card. I need to see all 4 corners. And I specifically say that. I need a clean copy, all 4 corners, or bring it to the office. I'll make a photocopy of it. But those are the things that are going to harm you down the way. I've even had where the medical company has misspelled the person's name or not filled something out, and I'm like, you have to go back. You can't just edit a DOT document, by the way. You can't just fill out, now if it's the fact that the guy didn't sign it or put his address, those are all handwritten. But I'm talking like from a doctor, if your last name is Johnston and they write Johnson, it is not going to fly.
Or just look over that.
Correct. And I have drivers that whatever their legal name is, so if it's, Byers Smith and it's a hyphenated name, whatever is on the application is what they're going to want to see on that. So we've had those kickback, right? So there are definitely some checks and balances that you can do, but I find that that's the most frustrating thing. The wait time is what's killing people. The frustration is that I made the mistake and now there's a delay, and that happens more so when you go to scan, right? You go to log in the scanner. So this is now flipped to the onboarding part of First Advantage to the maintenance part of First Advantage. And that's the part where people like to, bang their head against a wall when they're ready to dispatch and it says medical card expired. And you're like, I uploaded it yesterday. And it's like, well, it's, and then they get we say it's 24 to 48 hours. And you're like, but my guy needs to go right now, right? And the terminal saying, we can't update those for you anymore. So there's this whole, like we're in it. Everybody that's watching knows that, oh, yes, I felt that. I'm getting a lot of head nods, I think, out in the world right now. But those are the ones that are frustrating when you're ready to dispatch and the guy can't drive. So then you have to go back and say, oh, there was something missing. The driver's license number was wrong. The date was wrong. The I wears glasses wasn't checked, the CDL bubble wasn't filled in, whatever it is, the full address, the zip code wasn't, the phone number wasn't legible. So all those things, right, will impact a clear, approved, reviewed DOT card. And you think, you set it and forget it. You're like, upload, we'll be good tomorrow. He'll be ready to run. Route's covered. And they go to do it and they're like, boop, expired driver's license. Now that one's an easy one because you just go, unless they actually forgot it was their birthday and didn't go get their driver's license.
But I assume even at a time like that, if they're ruled ineligible that morning for dispatch, they're not going out. And so, time like that, you just have to either send the manager in the truck. Hopefully you've got a backup, figure it out, and, immediately. And that's when you feel the most frustration.
Well, and then the frustrating part is that if the driver did get their DOT in the time frame that you needed, right, and you uploaded it, but you didn't go back and check that it was approved or reviewed for clarity and all that stuff, that driver deserves to work that day. Yeah. So use him as a jumper, send him with the manager, send him with another driver that might need, help move the ball forward. But that guy doesn't deserve to get sent home without pay because... unless he wants to take the day off, that's fine. But at the end of the day, he was prepared to work, and it was your technology that failed, right, or your process that failed. So we do that quite a bit when it happens. But we do. My team will go in and double check. So if I upload something or if they upload something, we check within 24 hours that it's actually been cleared, because sometimes it is just, clarity or fuzzy or blurry or whatever it is, but there could be missing information and you think you're all good, you uploaded, everything's good, that guy should be eligible to drive tomorrow, and here, it didn't work. We actually had that. There's also a 10 megabyte limit on the upload, so sometimes you don't realize what you're clicking on if you're just a clicker. So you upload it and it usually gives you a little window that says okay. And you say, okay. But sometimes it says this file's too big, it's 10 megs or higher. And you go, okay. And then you don't realize that that's actually
it didn't
not uploaded. So we've learned that one. I learned that it took one good time for me to be, I was on my phone. And I was like, I'll upload it right now. And then I got the okay. And I was like, okay.
You're not
and
even reading, you're just clicking.
That was not the okay I needed to click on that day. So just like trials and errors of things that I've learned over the course. But I find that that's when my frustration gets the best of me and I get really mad is the turnaround time. But it's a turnaround time because I did something. Or my guy waited too long. We actually, one of the good things of First Advantage, there is a reporting and a compliance section. So you can do a report of upcoming expirations, whether they're already expired or are coming up. So 30, 45 days of MVRs, medical cards, and ground cloud training. Well, your certification training, regarding whatever vendor you use. But you can get a list of those. So it's not like, oh my gosh, that guy's recert, his certification is going to expire tomorrow. And we're like, okay, so you have to get the guy in a 1-day class for recertification. And that's then gets really messy when you can't get everybody in the appropriate class at the right time.
I think what it comes down to is this is a process and there are set time limits for just about everything and understanding how long that takes and understanding how long a mistake takes or a delay can take. It's never going to be like I made a mistake, so it's just cost me an hour. It's usually 24 hours. And understanding all of that is important, but it also points to exactly what you said, is that it's a lot. It's not a trivial amount of work to make sure it's done correctly and that you're following up and communicating to drivers and communicating throughout the whole process to make sure everybody's engaged. And it also points to why a lot of times we recommend working with a vendor before you know what you're doing on the recruiting side, because it's hard to figure all this out on your own unless you're really willing to take the delays and the trials and errors. So whether you learn from somebody who's doing it or done it before, or a lot of people use a vendor early on to, figure out the process before they bring it internally. I think it's not a super fun or exciting process, but it's the process that FedEx is requiring. This is how we get drivers in. This is how we certify them. There's ways to check it, and it's work, but this is the technology and the world we live in. So make sure you understand how it works, or make sure you're working with somebody who does.
So there's workarounds, there's communication. Service Connect, like I said, is that new online. That's actually been super helpful for me because you don't have to wait online on the call, right? So it's pretty much you can do it while you're at your desk, kind of working on other things. Again, something that your BC is not going to be able to do.
Yeah.
Right. So that's definitely admin staff, or, luckily, if you have a vendor that you use, a hiring vendor that you use, they'll be able to do it. But those are the things that, can speed things up, is use the Service Connect. It's just a chat, basically live chat to get through these questions. You need your order ID, your service numbers. Make sure you have your people, all their information, so that when you call them, they can look into that file specifically. And then use your quals team. They're there. It's a qualifications team. Ours is Eastern Quals at FedEx.com, or we have another one, Central Quals at FedEx.com. If there is something in the file that you see case canceled and you don't have transparency or cannot figure out what is wrong with that employee's file, reach out. Or there's been times where they're completely eligible and they don't make it all the way to My Ground Biz or the CDAS program, so they don't see that they're eligible. They need this wonderful R word called repush. And Quals can help you with that. Don't just sit back and be frustrated.
Yeah.
Right? Ask questions.
Be
poke in the
proactive.
Community, ask the positive questions, ask questions to move the ball forward, and connect with that Service Connect. And sometimes it's, sorry, we're just waiting.
Yeah.
And sometimes there is oh, I'm sorry, let's see if we can help you with that.
Yeah.
So I think there's goods and bads, but yeah.
But it's what we live with.
But it's what we live with it, and that's the process. But there are ways to navigate, make it a little bit easier on yourself.
Yeah. And those are great tips and tools. I think not everybody understands that there are things you can actually do to go ask for help and ask for questions and maybe accelerate or escalate something. But so thank you for talking through the exciting world of First Advantage. It is the world that any FedEx contractor lives in, so it's important.
Yes.
So,
thanks for having us.
Thanks.
You got it.